Good evening, Central Illinois. Good evening, Sports 2.0 Network listeners, and everyone else that may be listening. Welcome to the Colten Kahler Show, again here on a Thursday night, coming to you live from the home office here. Got a great show tonight scheduled, set up. I'm going to take you right into Thursday night football. A great matchup between the lovely New York Giants and the Washington football team. Just a football lover's dream on a Thursday night. Not. This is basically what Thursday night was set up for, a terrible football game. And we will get a terrible football game tonight, I'm sure, but it'll be so terrible that it'll be good. And I'll be looking forward to it because it's football and we're back. We're going to start in the MLB tonight because things are heating up in the wild card race, especially in both the AL and the NL. We'll start in the AL, and it's really between three divisional teams right now: the Blue Jays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox. Obviously, two teams that despise each other, Yankees and Red Sox. They're all tied right now. The Blue Jays are hot, though. They are hot. 8-2 in their last 10. It seems like since they moved back to Toronto, they've just gone on an absolute tear, and they find themselves right now at the top of those three teams. So it could be very close down the stretch, and it's going to be very close. Yankees and Blue Jays are tied 82-64, and Boston at 83-65. And Oakland and Seattle, they're right there, 3-4. You know, you'd like to be a little bit closer, but they're within knocking distance. So I think the AL wildcard down the stretch is going to be very interesting because it would be really odd to see either both the Yankees or the Red Sox not in the wild card. One of those three teams is not going to make, the playoffs, and it would be very odd to see it be New York or Boston. But again, I'm going to open up the chat line to your guys' thoughts. Send in your baseball thoughts, your football thoughts when we get there. But right now, we've got the AL wild card, and it would be very surprising, I think, for New York. At the trade deadline, they went out and they tried to. They really needed pitching help, in my opinion. They didn't do anything. They got two bats. They got Gallo and Rizzo, who will both love that short porch. Two great bats. They're going to help that team, but they need pitching because right now it's all on Garrett Cole. And, the whole issue that we had a long time ago with the sticky substances, spider attack, all that. But the Yankees are right there on the doorstep, and it'll be very interesting to see where things go down the stretch. And then my beloved St. Louis Cardinals. Oh, just when I give up on them, just when I'm ready to throw in the towel, wave the white flag, they find themselves back in my life, back in my heart. I can't say enough about this team. And I've been saying it for weeks. That this team gives me 2011 vibes. It's all over where you struggle from the start of the year. To the start of the year, we were actually, playing well, and then we struggle through most of the year, make questionable moves at the deadline that somehow seem to be working out. And besides, 1-2 starts maybe from both Happ and Lester, those have been pretty solid pickups for the Cardinals. I mean, both left-handers that go out 5-6 innings strong and turn it over to your bullpen. Now, the bullpen's been a complete disaster. It struggled a little bit in New York. Made last night a little more interesting than it probably needed to be, and definitely on Tuesday night made that game a heck of a lot more interesting than it needed to be. But Cardinals go in to New York against the Mets, and they get the sweep. It's Rodney's been saying, for weeks that if the Cardinals were able to get within a couple of games before September, he'd be like, all right, this is doable. And I was kind of counting them out, but I said this team, what they're going to do is they're going to kind of distance themselves a little bit. I'm going to be ready to kind of throw it in and just be done with them. And then they're going to work their way back. And they're going to sneak into the playoffs. They're going to beat the Dodgers in the one-game wild card. And it's going to throw baseball media into a frenzy. I mean, people are going to be livid when the 100-plus win Dodgers team is not past the wild card round. It's just going to be pure madness. And it's what the Cardinals do. It's what they've done for years. And as a fan, it's frustrating at times because you'd like to be this 100-win team. But look at the NL West. The Giants, who have like a 2% chance to make the playoffs or something begin the year, are now the first team to clinch a playoff spot, and it's unbelievable. Really, what the Cardinals have been able to do, because you get guys like Lester, Happ, Wainwright. Who would have thought that Wainwright at the beginning of the year was going to be your ace down the stretch? Obviously, we did not plan on the injuries that we have had this year. Who knows if we get Flaherty back? I kind of hope we don't, because while it would be nice to have him back, he hasn't pitched a whole lot this year. He really hasn't. And he's going to have some shaky starts, and to hopefully shut him down to where he's healthy going into next year is where I'd rather be. I would rather kind of see where we go. But if he's ready to go and there for the postseason, you've got to take that guy, and you've got to take your chances with him. Dakota Hudson sounds like he's close to being on the return. Right now in the National League wild card, Cardinals are in that second spot. The Padres and Reds both won today. I think the Reds won 1-0 against the Pirates. They lost the first two in that series. The Padres won today as well, and they're both one game back. And Philly's not out of it either. They're 3 games back. If they're able to get, a few wins, it could be interesting. But the Cardinals have everything in front of them. They have 3 against the Padres this weekend, and then they have, I think, do they have 1 or 2 series left with the Reds? But if they're able to get at least, I would like to sweep San Diego this weekend. I don't know if that'll happen, but at least get 2 or 3. At least get 2 or 3, because the Reds have the Dodgers this weekend, and I think they face Buehler, Scherzer, and I can't remember who the last arm is, but it's not going to be fun nonetheless for the Reds. And so if the Dodgers can help us out a little bit this weekend, that would be great. And we're able to take care of our business. Cardinals have a little bit of cushion going into next week. Again, it's getting towards the end of the season, getting towards September, where things start to get really interesting. And both wild cards, both the American League and the National League, are going to be fun to watch down the stretch. Transition here, the Ryder Cup. I want to kind of touch on this briefly. What in the world's going on with Team USA? I mean, what in the world is going on with Team USA? You have the European squad, who they're like brothers with each other, and they get along so well. And while we may have more talent year in and year out, they kind of get our butts handed to us a little bit. Obviously, last Ryder Cup, U.S. kind of got their butt handed to them. And this year, with all the drama going into it, everybody on the team kind of hates each other, it seems like. You've got Bryson and Brooks and their whole thing, and the whole thing with Brooks this week, and the comments that Paul Azinger made. And I think he's spot on, that if Brooks does not want to be there, then he needs to, step back and let someone else that wants to be there. And I think while this might be a old man, get off my lawn kind of comment, I think a big reason why the European squad has been so successful in the Ryder Cup the last however many times that we've played it is because, quite honestly, it seems like they want it more. That may sound silly to say, but if there's that extra motivation that they have in a big rivalry that they kind of hold this to be, why not? I mean, it's kind of sad watching our guys just kind of not care about the whole situation. And it's frustrating because we barely squeaked one out in 2016, I believe, when we were at Hazeltine. And then 2018 over in Europe. I can't remember the name of the course for the life of me, but pretty well got our butts handed to us. And this year at Whistling Straits, it's going to be interesting. We have the talent to beat them, but sometimes talent doesn't outweigh heart. And this European team is going to come in with a lot of emotion and a lot of heart, and they're going to put up a good fight. You've got veterans on that team, the Ian Poulters and the the Sergio, you'll have Rom. I mean, it's going to be interesting. We've got a few young guns, but I like our chances nonetheless protecting, our home turf, if you will. That's my thoughts on the Ryder Cup. We are going to transition here to college football. I'm kind of checked out on college football a little bit. Illinois has already just kind of made me lose interest, getting their butts handed to them a little bit the last 2 weeks. And I quite honestly haven't had a lot of time to watch college football, but my surprises from week 2, Ohio State losing at home to Oregon. And Oregon's a good team. I didn't quite know what to expect from Oregon, but quite honestly, Ohio State, their offense didn't lose in that game. People were kind of getting on CJ Stroud for that game, but the dude threw over 300 yards of offense. I mean, put up ridiculous numbers. It's not that their fault, not his fault. His defense couldn't get a stop anywhere in that game, but that was kind of a big surprise. Does that take the Big Ten out of their lone shot after, the Big Ten's shot of making the college football playoff? I think it's going to depend on what Iowa does. I think it's going to depend on what Penn State does. I think those two teams right now are the Big Ten's best chance at getting into the college football playoff. But in the long run, I really don't think it matters, because after watching 3 weeks of college football, 2 weeks of college football, Alabama is so by far better than everyone else in college football. It's not even close. Not even close. And this is pure Nick Saban being the greatest college football coach at work. Blows out Miami in week 1. Gets on his players for not showing emotion and seemed like they weren't caring. Blows out, I don't even, who they played last week. Just, it doesn't matter. Is still mad at his players, screaming at them coming off the field when they're up 40. I mean, this is pure Nick Saban at work. And there's one team that I could see stopping Alabama, and it's in their own conference. It'd be Georgia. But I really don't know if that's going to happen. I think we might see another Alabama-Georgia championship, because I think they are by far the two best teams. But I think Alabama's going to go back-to-back. I don't see, a lot of other teams stopping them. You look at the rest of the top teams, pulling it up here in just a second. If you look at rankings here, you've got the AP top 25. You've got Oklahoma. Oklahoma can put up points, but they don't have a defense. Oregon, they're going to be able to put up points, but I don't know if their defense is going to be able to stop Alabama. Iowa, they have a defense, but I don't know if they can put up enough points. And then Clemson at 6, they obviously struggled week 1 against Georgia. Texas A&M, they're 2-0. They barely got past, Colorado last week? Cincinnati, I guarantee you they'll lose this week to Indiana. Ohio State, Penn State, Florida. Florida is going to have a good test this week with Alabama. And I think we're going to get our first, in my opinion, first good look at this Alabama team, because I think Miami's overrated. They are over-publicized, and the fact that they are still in the top 24, granted they did lose to Alabama, but I don't think they're as advertised, in my opinion. I think they kind of get by on their reputation. But it's going to be very interesting to see this Alabama team and how they react, not only now in a conference game, but against another top team in the nation. So will the $1 million quarterback be able to get it done this week against the Gators? I believe that game is in Gainesville. I believe. Don't quote me. But it's a whole nother ball game looking at Alabama and the other teams in this conference. Another surprise that I had, Texas receiving a warm welcome to the SEC. Texas, was in a little bit of a trap game week 1 against Louisiana State. I figured they would have took care of business as they did. Week 2, I saw it as another trap game going on the road at Arkansas. Arkansas is they're a lower level SEC team, but they're still good. They would compete in the Big 12, and Arkansas took it to them last week. They really did. And the struggles of the new coach, Steve Sarkisian, the offensive struggles, you saw it a lot last week. I mean, the offensive numbers from Texas were abysmal last week, just brutal. And I think, them being in the SEC is going to do them more harm than good. Texas could go from a top team in the Big 12. They're still overshadowed by Oklahoma, in my opinion, but they're going to struggle in the SEC, playing Florida, playing Alabama, playing LSU, playing, Arkansas. Again, it's not easy. It's a whole nother ballgame in the SEC. And, Texas got a warm welcome this last week. As I mentioned, the, team that probably stands in Alabama's way is going to be Georgia. And for college football, it's, you like to see maybe the playoff committee extend the playoff bracket, get more teams in, get a little more revenue money coming in, but it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things because Alabama, no matter what, is going to run it, in my opinion. I think Alabama will go back-to-back this year. So my early NCAA college football playoff championship, Alabama will probably take on Georgia if I had to guess, and Alabama's going to win. I want to talk a little bit about Illinois. It's going to be another struggle this week. I think with Maryland coming in, Maryland's got a very good offense with the Tagovailoa. I can't remember his first name, to his younger brother. But they beat West Virginia in week 1. Maryland was at home that week, and West Virginia's good. I don't think they're as good as what people say, but they're still a very talented team. And West Virginia is favored this week against Virginia Tech, and I think it's just because West Virginia is at home, in my opinion. I think people are sleeping a little bit on Virginia Tech, but that'll be a good test for the Hokies this week on the road at West Virginia. But Maryland's going to come in, they're going to put up points, and Illinois' defense has struggled through 2 weeks, and really they struggled a little bit in week 0, technically, against Nebraska, but and Jim Matson has said it multiple times that it's not going to get any easier for Illinois. It is not going to get. I think they are the oldest team in college football. They have like over 22, I want to say 22 like super seniors that will graduate at the end of this year, and it's going to be bad next year. If you thought they were bad this year, it's going to be worse next year. And I wholeheartedly agree with Jim when he said that. So that's a great point made by him. You lose Brandon Peters, so hopefully, Art Sikowski, who's kind of been not great, but not terrible by any means. So it'll be pretty disheartening for Illinois to be 1-3 after this next week. They play a Friday home game, 8:00. But if Illinois is able to pull this one out, they're back to 2-2. They're 2-0 in the Big Ten. By God, if they run the table, no way do I think they will. But if they happen to do it, at 2-2, not great, but you're 2-0 in your conference. And I think if Illinois is able to run the table, that 2-0 start's going to be a big boost for them. My upset specials this week for college football. Michigan State's on the road at Miami. Miami's favored by 6. I expect Michigan State to win outright by far in that game. I think Miami's a little overhyped, not as advertised. They're not as good, as I mentioned. And Michigan State's good. They beat Northwestern week 1, and they won last week handedly. I expect Michigan State to win this game. So Sparty on the road. Upset special number 2, Purdue at Notre Dame. Irish favored by 7. You've seen Notre Dame struggle in week 1 with Florida State, watch them struggle week 2 with Toledo, barely pulling out both games. And Purdue won week 1 over Oregon State, and they won last week. Can't remember who, but I think that's a game that Purdue could win outright, maybe. They'll definitely cover, in my opinion, but it's a game Purdue could go in and get a win by far. And I would not be surprised to see the Boilermakers go in and upset the number 12 team in the nation this weekend. My last upset special of the week, Indiana over Cincinnati. Cincinnati's ranked number 8. I believe that's where Lance Leipold went after leaving Buffalo. Cincinnati barely missed the college football playoff last year. I think they were like 6 or 7 maybe going into bowl games last year. Indiana struggled week 1 at Iowa. They really kind of got blown out of the water. People say that Indiana might be a little overhyped, but I think Indiana just is kind of struggling to find their way a little bit. Head coach Tom Allen, I think he'll have his guys ready at Cincinnati this week. It'll be a close game, but I think the Hoosiers get that done. High school football, pretty interesting here in Central Illinois. You've got a very good Metamora team, a very good Pekin team, a very good Washington team. The Mid-Illini is strong. Morton's not, a team to look past. Dunlap, they're a little down this year, but they could still get you in a close game. I've got questions around the Mid-Illini. Metamora, I think, looks to be the most balanced team in all aspects of the game: defense, offense, front line, running backs, wide receivers. Pekin has really been kind of held steady by Kanye Taylor. Just a phenomenal running back. Very quick, very shifty, hard to tackle, and he's really got this Pekin Dragons team going in the right direction. I think they're ranked like 7th in 7A or something like that. I think I saw this week. Metamora is still at 9, Peoria High at 7, and I can't quite figure out if Peoria High is for real or not. They're at number 7. They win week 1 over Richwoods, I believe, very handedly. Lost week 2 to Wheaton St. Francis. Wheaton St. Francis is always going to be good. Got rolled by Wheaton St. Francis. And then last week struggled with Danville for the first half and then kind of blew it out of the water in the second half. But I still really struggle to believe that Peoria High is for real. They've got a good team. They're always going to have a good offense, I know. And they kind of play that. I don't know if they still do the onside kick. They don't try and put up as many points as they can and see if you can stop them. That's what they used to do. I don't know if they're still kind of that philosophy right now with this team, but they are good. I just don't know if they're as advertised. So it'll be interesting to see. But the Mid-Illini is strong this year. And Washington lost to a very good Kankakee team. Washington's always going to be good with, a coach in Daryl Crouch. They're going to be strong up front. They're going to have a good run game. And I think if Metamora going into Pekin, Metamora will host Pekin. If both teams are undefeated, that place is going to be packed. Malone Field is going to be packed. And if Metamora is able to win that game and they've got to go through Washington to win the conference, I think that would be week 8 at Washington. That place is going to be packed. That place is going to be packed. Because no matter what, whether the two teams are terrible or whether the two teams are both 8-0, 7-0, that matchup always brings out the best in each teams. Always does. And it's just that rivalry between the two teams. I don't know what it is. It just, no matter what sport, they always have the willingness to do whatever they, I guess, can, to make sure they win that game. And if Metamora's, got a chance to win the conference that week, it would be crazy over in Washington. So that's what I've got for high school football. NFL, great start to week 1. From a viewer's point, it was a great end to week 1. From a Ravens fan point of view, it was a terrible end to week 1. But it's great to have the NFL back. I went 1-1 in my fantasy leagues. I'm not sure how everyone else did. Again, if you've got thoughts, questions, drop them in the comment section here, and I'll put them up, whether you're listening on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you may be. I appreciate it. I got a few questions kind of about the NFL. Is Dallas a threat in the NFC? I think they can be. That defense looked improved from that first or last year when they were the worst defense darn near in franchise history. That offense can go toe-to-toe with Super Bowl champs, and unfortunately, Tom Brady still got too much time on the clock last week, and that's pretty much the main reason why Dallas lost that game. Dallas and Dak Prescott, their offense really outplayed the Buccaneers, but they just gave the greatest quarterback of all time too much time, unfortunately. And Tom Brady's going to do what Tom Brady does. Granted, the offensive pass interference that probably should have been called that wasn't. That'll happen. But I do have some concerns. One with Buffalo. To have the second half that they did, not great. Barely moved the ball. Didn't put up many points. Baltimore, I have my concerns. You just lost to one of the worst teams in the AFC. I think the Raiders' offense and Derek Carr's improved, but you've got a lot of guys hurt. I saw a post before I went on air. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 guys on the IR for the Ravens right now. 15 guys on the IR. Now, I know that injuries happen. But about 7 of these guys are or would be starters. You've got 15 guys on the IR, and at least 6 to 7 are or would be starters. And I'm trying to tell myself to stay positive, but it's not looking good. If you look at the stats from last week, I think the Ravens were second in the pressure percentage and the amount of dropbacks that Lamar had. The only team worse than that was the Jets. Not great. The offensive line had struggles last year staying healthy. This year we've had a few issues. We were missing starting guard last week. We lost Ronnie Stanley, and it's not looking good for the Ravens. It's not. And unfortunately, when you don't have much of a run game, you're relying a little bit too much on Lamar. The passing game was there at times last week, but you got to be able to hold on to a 14-0 lead. You've got to do what you can. So my concerns are there for Buffalo and Baltimore. I do have concerns with Green Bay. I think they're gonna get it figured out. And as angry Green Bay fans sounded on Twitter on Sunday, when you have a quarterback who's a little bit of a prima donna, whether you like Aaron Rodgers or not, I think he's a phenomenal quarterback, but he's a prima donna. It is what it is. When he focused more on his own life, wanting to do things, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you got a job to do, and you have a team to be around. And Aaron Rodgers it shouldn't be a surprise of the way the Green Bay Packers played in week 1 because of the way Aaron Rodgers kind of handled this offseason. I expect them to make a turnaround. They'll be fine. But in a division where everybody lost in week 1, nobody looked good. Obviously, Detroit's going to be terrible. People are higher on Minnesota than I am. I don't think Minnesota's going to be that good. And especially if Kirk Cousins, who knows what we're going to get out of him this year. Dalvin Cook is going to do what he's going to get his numbers no matter what. But it's pretty brutal in that NFC North. And obviously, the Bears are not going to be good with Andy Dalton. It is what it is. The Bears need to play Justin Fields. He looked phenomenally better than Andy Dalton last week, and they're trying to hold on to Andy Dalton, and it's not going to work. So with that being said, we're going to get to week 2 of Colton's top 10. Last week, my top 10 we made quite a few changes actually this week. Had quite a few slide up and down. I lost my top 10, so that's cool. But we'll go ahead with this week's top 10 at number 10, actually making it into the top 10 this week. Last week, they were an honorable mention. I've got the Cleveland Browns. They went toe-to-toe with Kansas City last week. I picked them to win. They were all but about a quarter away from doing so. And this week, for their performance last week, they didn't get the win, but they're right there. And this week's honorable mention is Dallas. And those two flip-flop there. And for good reason, because the Browns defense is going to be a little more consistent than I think Dallas will. And Dallas already with the injury to DeMarcus Lawrence, who's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. I expect more out of the Browns now than I do from Dallas. But again, Dallas is going to play in the worst division, arguably, in football. So I'm expecting a lot out of both teams, but I've got the Browns and Dallas flip-flopping this one. So the Browns at 10. Falling all the way from number 5, number 4, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. With just the amount of injuries, Lamar's got to be able to hold on to the ball. It's not looking pretty for the Ravens. We've got to get guys back, got to get guys healthy. It could be a very bad year for the Ravens. Could be. And I'm kind of preparing myself for that, unfortunately. But I've got them dropping very far down the list. At number 8, dropping from number 3, I've got Buffalo because I've got my concerns with them, as I mentioned. Josh Allen did not look great last week. Buffalo as a whole should have won that game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is not very good, in my opinion, even though Pittsburgh went way up the scale in this week's top 10, purely off the fact that they won. Pittsburgh, they got a good win. They have a terrible offense, but they're able to go in and get the job done, and you got to give credit when credit's due. But Buffalo, for their performance, drops down to number 8. At number 7, I've got the Rams. I still haven't bought into the hype. I understand that it can be there, but you beat the Chicago Bears. I mean, whoop-de-doo. You had 2 touchdowns over 40 yards with a defender not within 15 yards of the guy. I mean, the Bears' defense is terrible. Just bad. Just miscommunications all over the place. Matthew Stafford does look a lot better than Jared Goff would be, but I'm still not buying into the hype. I think if they go in and kind of handle Indy this week, then I might be like, all right, this team might be for real. But as of right now, I'm still not buying into the hype, especially with a loaded division and the 2 of the other teams in this division ahead of them. At number 6, I've got the Seahawks. They had a good win on the road week 1 against Indy. Kind of a low-scoring game. I kind of expected that a little bit. A strong defense in Indy. A good offense in Seattle. Seattle's trying to rebuild their defense from last year where it seemed like every week they give up 500 yards. The Colts offense still trying to find their way with Carson Wentz. They've had injuries. T.Y. Hilton being out doesn't help. You've got a good running back in Jonathan Taylor. They've had a few injuries on the offensive line. But the Seahawks are able to go in and get it done. So I've got them at number 6 this week. At number 5, I've got the Cardinals. I mean, just absolutely dominant in week 1. Absolutely dominant over the Tennessee Titans, a team that I expected a lot more from, especially with the additions that they made this offseason. There was the issues with Julio, and Derrick Henry couldn't get much going. And how about Chandler Jones, 5 sacks. I mean, just phenomenal play from him. And if they're able to be that dominant on defense, I don't see why this team can't compete for the top spot in that division and a top spot in the NFL. I mean, they've got the offensive firepower with Kyler Murray. I think they've got Kenyon Drake as their running back, I believe, as their running back. Someone might be able to check me on that. But, they're going to be a good team. And I've got them at number 5 this week. Number 4, New Orleans. They surprised me. They absolutely mowed down Green Bay last week. I did not expect that Green Bay defense to be so bad. Jameis had 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, only threw for about 150 yards, 148, something like that. So good field position. This New Orleans defense is going to be top notch. I just wasn't expecting their offense to be as good. but they really surprised me. So much of the reason why they bump up to number 4 this week. I don't even know if they were in my top 10 last week. I don't think so. Pittsburgh jumps up to number 3. Again, got to give credit when credit's due. That offense is still unproven, in my opinion. I still think when they get, down the stretch, Big Ben in the season is going to be beaten up a little bit. I expect kind of about the same season from Pittsburgh last year as I do this year. Probably start off hot, scrape by some games that they probably shouldn't have won. Last week probably shouldn't have won, but, again, credit where credit's due, and they're able to scrape out a win. Number 2, I got Kansas City. Looked a little rough last week against a good Cleveland team. Great second half, and they did what, they're going to do. They're going to put up points, and Mahomes looked good. Kelsey looked good. Tyreek looked good. So they stay at number 2 this week, and Tampa Bay still at number 1 for their win in a thriller of a game against Dallas on Thursday night. They've got to clean up those mistakes. 5 turnovers last week by that Tampa offense, but that defense is as advertised, even though Dak had a phenomenal game. They were able to shut down Ezekiel Elliott, but it would not surprise me to see another Tampa Kansas City. I doubt we will, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it again this year. So that rounds out this week's Colton's top 10. We'll go with the Pigskin Pick'em, and then I'll pretty much be done, and that'll lead you guys into Thursday night football between the New York Giants and the Washington football team. Just a star-studded matchup tonight. Can't wait for it. So in the Pigskin Pick'em last week, Rodney went, let's see here. Rodney went 7-4. 7-4 Rodney went, and through 2 weeks, I'm 9-8. Not great. Above 500, but not great. Got to clean it up this week. So we've got from a college realm, Nebraska at Oklahoma. Sooners favored by 22.5. I think if Oklahoma wants to be, top-notch team in the college football realm, they've got to cover and they've got to roll Nebraska. Nebraska's not good. They lost to Illinois. They beat 2 okay teams. Fordham's not great. Buffalo is, if you think about it, they're okay. I think they were better last year than what they are this year. I'll take Oklahoma in that old rivalry being renewed this week between Nebraska and Oklahoma, and especially with it being at home. I'll take the Sooners in this one. Cincinnati at Indiana. Bearcats favored by 4. I think Cincinnati could be a little overhyped. I think Indiana's going to find their stride, and they'll get it done this week. Indiana at home. I'll take the Hoosiers in that one. Virginia Tech at West Virginia. Mountaineers favored by 3, and I think the only reason they're favored is because they're at home. Again, I think people might be overhyping West Virginia a little bit, and they're not buying into Virginia Tech as much as I am. Virginia Tech had a great Week 1 win over UNC. UNC is going to be a good team in the ACC. Excuse me. I'll take the Hokies in this one, and I'll take them to cover too. Alabama, number 1 at number 11. Florida tied, favored by 14.5. This is going to be a really good game. I think it is. It's going to be a very good test for Alabama. I don't think Miami was that good of a test. I think, obviously, as I mentioned multiple times this episode already, Miami's overhyped, not as advertised. I'm going to take the Tide to win. I would assume they'd probably cover as well, but I'll take the Tide in this one. And then the whiteout game of the week, I believe where College Game Day is, number 22 Auburn at number 10 Penn State. Whiteout for Penn State this week. Nittany Lions look good this year. I haven't looked in much at Auburn. The first year without Gus Malzahn in a while. Penn State favored by 5. This Happy Valley is going to be rocking on Saturday night. They are going to be rocking. If you have not seen what Penn State does for their whiteout, go to YouTube. Look it up. Kirk Herbstreit is all over it this week, and he's excited to be back. I'll take Penn State and the -5 this week. So I'll take Penn State to cover as well. Going to the NFL, we'll go Cincinnati at Chicago. That'll probably be the Fox game here at noon. I believe they're on Fox. Yeah, 12 o'clock on Fox here. I'm going to take the Bears. People are taking the Bengals. I think Minnesota's not that good. Bengals were able to scrape by last week. And I think if the Bears want to turn things around, they've got to get it done this week against a rougher team in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's going to be good, but this defense has got to be better for Chicago. I'll take the Bears. Los Angeles Rams, that's Colts. I think if the Rams want me to buy into their hype, if they want me to really solidify themselves as a top team in the NFC West, if they want to be that championship caliber team that they were a few years ago, they've got to get it done this week in Indianapolis. I'll take the Rams. Dallas at Los Angeles Chargers. Dallas, I don't like it, but I'll take it. I think their offense is going to be able to put up points. Justin Herbert is going to be good. Hopefully the Dallas defense can force him into mistakes, but it's going to be probably another high-scoring affair, I think, between both teams. So I'll take the Cowboys. That's a 3:25 game on Fox here. Let's see. We've got Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs at Baltimore Ravens on NBC. I'm going to take the Chiefs. It shouldn't be close, in my opinion. It'll probably be like the game it was last year. Not looking forward to it. Ravens are going to be 0-2 after this week. It is what it is. I'll take the Chiefs. Detroit Lions at Green Bay Packers, Monday Night Football on ESPN. Packers in a landslide. Detroit was able to kind of backdoor cover last week and a lot of garbage time points and yardage there from the 49ers. Green Bay, they'll get back on track this week, and they'll find a way to win a divisional game. And then tonight, New York Giants at the Washington Football Team, Thursday Night Football on Fox, 7:20 kickoff. So you've got about 8 minutes or so until you guys are ready for that one. So my pick going into it, people have been hyping up the Giants all week so far, and I don't know why. If you think this Washington Football Team is their season's riding on Ryan Fitzpatrick, then why the heck are you talking about him in the first place? I mean, Fitzpatrick has not been, top-notch. Really, he's been a career backup guy his entire career. I'm going to take the Washington Football Team. Their defense is going to be better than New York. New York's offense is terrible. You've got Daniel Jones, who I think his touchdown to interception ratio is 1-1. Their offensive line is terrible. Saquon's hurt. They're going to limit his carries. And I don't see why people are hyping up New York. I'm sorry, Tim, if you listen at all, if you're tuning in, I'm sure you may not blame me, but I don't know. I'm taking the Washington Football Team. So yeah, that's again kicking off here in about 7 minutes. So again, thank you for tuning in, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, whatever it is. I appreciate you all through the first few weeks that we've had here. But that'll do it for me, and we'll see you next week here on the Colten Kahler Show on the Sports 2.0 podcast.